Hey, Mayor Local, we're ready to start.
Well, good morning, everyone. Welcome to our planning meeting for today, Thursday, February the 23rd. I'll call the meeting to order at 9:25. And we'll start off with our territorial land acknowledgement. Before our meeting gets underway, I would like to formally recognize the traditional keepers of this land and specifically our neighbors of the Alderville First Nation with a formal territorial acknowledgement. We respectfully acknowledge that the township of Allen McCalderman is located on the Mississaugan Anishinaabe territory and is the traditional territory of the Mississaugan Anishinaabe. The township of Allen McCalderman respectfully acknowledges that the Mississaugan Nation are the collective stewards and caretakers of these lands and waters in perpetuity, and that they continue to maintain this responsibility to ensure their health and the integrity for generations to come. Next, I'll ask council for disclosure of pecuniary interest or general nature thereof.
Mayor Logal, through you, Mayor Logal, to Madam Clerk. Madam Clerk, I will be declaring a pecuniary interest. That is to do with a budget item, and it is budget item 10. And the reason is pending litigation with the library board. Mayor Logal, I will not be voting on the budget pertaining to the library board. I will be voting on everything excluding the library board when I do vote for the approval of the budget for 2023.
Thank you. Anybody else have a declaration? Okay, that'll be duly noted. Number 4 is the approval of the agenda as circulated. Be it resolved that the municipal planning meeting agenda for Thursday, February 23rd, 2023 be approved as circulated. Could I have a mover and a seconder? Moved by Deputy Mayor Stover, seconded by Councillor O'Neill. Any discussions? All in favor? The motion's carried. Next, we have item 5, municipal planning meeting approval of the minutes. And this is for our meeting of Friday, January 27th, 2023. Be it resolved that the municipal planning meeting minutes of Friday, January 27th, 2023 be approved. Can I have a motion for that? Moved by Councillor Ainsworth, seconded by Councillor Booth. All in favor? Carried. I guess I should have asked, is there any discussions regarding those? Seeing none. Okay, good. Thank you. Okay, next we have a motion to adjourn to a land division committee or a committee of adjustments meeting. Be it resolved that the council of the township of Allen McCalderman, being a land division committee or committee of adjustment, adjourned to a land division committee of adjustment meeting for the purpose of hearing consent applications, and we'll do that at 9:30. A mover and seconder. Moved by Councillor O'Neill and seconded by Deputy Mayor Stover. All in favor? Carried. I'm going to pass on the meeting now to our planner, Jennifer Current, and we'll start off with the application for Wilf Vedema and Sarah Vedema. Go ahead, Jennifer, please.
Through you, Mayor Logo. The Township of Allen McCalderman has received a severance or consent application for a property at 589 Pipeline Road. The owners are Wilf and Sarah Venema, and the agent is Kyle Venema. The purpose of the application is to create a rural lot with an area of 1.23 hectares, and the retained lot will have an area of 24 hectares. The property is located in Lot 13, Concession 3, geographic Haldeman, and it's located on the south side of Pipeline Road. The approximately 25 hectare subject property is centrally located in the municipality. The lands are developed with a single detached dwelling and a hatchery. It's a poultry hatchery. It's a relatively small facility. The hatchery will be located on the proposed severed lot, which is in the northwest corner of the property, in close proximity to Pipeline Road. The applicants are proposing to construct a single detached dwelling on that property as well, and it's my understanding that they will be operating the hatchery. There's a water course located in the southwest corner of the property. And not in the southwest corner. There's a water course located south of the existing buildings that it traverses the subject property. And because of that, the applicants were required to complete an environmental impact study and hydrologic assessment, because the new lot is within 120 meters of that key hydrologic feature and environmental features. So they retained Cambium Environmental to do a EIS and environmental impact study and hydrologic evaluation. And the results of that assessment, or the figure created with that assessment, is attached to this report as figure 2. And in figure 2, you'll see a yellow hatched area, which illustrates the area that's available for development in the area where they're proposing to sever the lot. So there is a developable area outside of any environmental area. And they did the required environmental study. The natural gas pipelines traverse the subject property and are located south of the proposed severed lot. The TransCanada Pipelines compressor station is located about 450 meters to the west of the subject property. And the severed lot is located about 55 meters north of the northmost pipeline. Surrounding land uses are a combination of rural residential, agricultural, and rural land uses. There is an unoccupied livestock barn that was identified on the west side of Broomfield Road, about 650 meters east of the subject property. So the subject property is designated rural and environmental protection in the township's official plan. The environmental protection designation pertains only to a small corner in the south, the small area in the southwest corner of the property, well away from the proposed severed lot. The severed lot's in the rural area, and severances are permitted under the provincial policy statement in the rural area. Both the severed and retained parcels are appropriately sized rural lots capable of accommodating the required private services that you need, this well and septic. Northumberland County Inspection Services did not have any objections with the proposed severance. The PPS, or the provincial policy statement, requires that applications comply with the minimum distance separation guidelines from OMAFRA. An MDS calculation was prepared for the livestock barn on Broomfield Road, and it requires a 178 meter MDS setback between the existing unoccupied livestock barn and the proposed severed lot. The proposed severed lot is 655 meters from the barn, well outside of the required MDS setback. And as I mentioned earlier, because the proposed severed lot is within 120 meters of a key hydrologic feature, hydrologic assessment was required, and that was prepared. And in that, a number of recommendations were made in the study. They've been outlined in the report. One of the most critical is the creation of a 30-meter vegetation protection zone, which is a zone that you can't have any development in between the development building envelope and the hydrologic feature. So the recommendation is that the vegetation protection zone be placed in an environmental protection zone when the property goes through a zoning bylaw amendment. So provided the recommendations of the EIS and hydrologic evaluation are followed, the results of the study said that potential impacts associated with the proposed development and site alteration can be appropriately minimized, provided the recommendations as outlined in section 7 can be followed. So all of the recommendations are listed in the report. And in order to ensure the protection of the vegetation protection zone, as I mentioned, it's recommended that that area be rezoned to the environmental protection zone. In their February 7th comments, Lower Trent noted that while there is a water course on the subject property for which there's no available floodplain mapping, the proposed severed lot is located far enough away from that water course that floodplain mapping is not required at this time. Portions of the property are regulated by Lower Trent Conservation, and any development within the regulated area would require a permit. However, the proposed building envelope is not within a regulated area. The application is consistent with the provincial policy statement and the growth plan for the Greater Golden Horseshoe. The property is not located on the Oak Ridges Marine Conservation Plan, and as such, the Oak Ridges Marine Conservation Plan doesn't apply to this application. The lands are designated rural areas in the Northumberland County Official Plan. Northumberland County Official Plan allows for severances in the rural area in provided they comply with the lower tier or the Township of Alderman's consent policies. Northumberland County, you've heard this one before. Northumberland County has adopted Official Plan Amendment number 1, establishing a natural heritage feature. OPA number 1 has not been approved by the ministry and is not yet forced in effect. A portion of the property a portion of the retained lot has been identified as being within the natural heritage area designation. However, the application conforms to the intent of the county official plan as it permits a residential lot in rural areas. The township's official plan, as I mentioned, the property is designated environmental protection and rural. The area on which the severed lot is located in the rural area, and severances are permitted. An environmental impact study, as discussed, was prepared and supported the application, said that it would not have any negative impacts, or the negative impacts could be mitigated provided the recommendations in the report were adhered to. The rural policies of the official plan allow for lands that are, the rural lands designation applies to lands of marginal agricultural value and have potential for non-agricultural development. In this case, while the lot is being created is relatively small in terms of rural lots, it does have an agricultural use on it. So that's why I'm recommending, when we get to the zoning section, that this lot stay in the agricultural designated zone and allow for a reduced lot area in the agricultural zone rather than rezone it to a rural residential use, because there's a hatchery on this property, and the hatchery it doesn't require a large expansive piece of property. They're hatching eggs, and when the eggs, as soon as they hatch, then the chicks or ducklings or whatever is being hatched are then dispersed. I should have mentioned earlier, an MDS calculation is not required for a hatchery because there's no manure being produced. So that's why an MDS calculation wasn't prepared for the hatchery, because as soon as the chicks are hatched, they're gone. So it complies with MDS for the offsite barn. A plan of subdivision isn't required as only one new lot's being created. Both of severed and retained lots have frontage on Pipeline Road, a year-round municipally maintained road, and the lots are appropriately sized. So the proposed severance complies with the policies in the township official plan. The subject property is zoned rural exception 56 on the township's zoning in the township zoning bylaw. The exception permits a mobile home to be used for the accommodations of persons employed on the farm in addition to a permitted single detached dwelling. That mobile home has been removed from the property. So when we rezone the property, we'll rezone the retained lot to the rural zone, and the severed lot will be rezoned to a rural exception zone, permitting a minimum lot size of 1.2 hectares, because the minimum lot size for a rural lot is 5 hectares. And the vegetation protection zone identified in the Cambium EIS should be rezoned to the environmental protection zone to ensure the protection of the on-site watercourse and wetland features. So subject to the proposed severed lot being rezoned to a rural exception zone and the vegetation protection zone being rezoned environmental protection, both the severed and retained lots will comply with the requirements of the township zoning bylaw. The application was circulated to a number of agencies. Manager of Public Works commented that an entrance would be permitted at a location to be determined. That's on the severed lot. Lower Trent's comments had been received earlier. They had no objections. Northumberland County reviewed. They had no objections. They stated that new lots proposed under the growth plan and the County of Septic Inspection Services had no comments. MHBC, which is a planning consulting firm that comments on behalf of TransCanada Pipelines, commented on behalf of TransCanada Pipelines, and they commented that there are 2 high-pressure natural gas pipelines that traverse the subject property. And that a compressor station operates within 750 meters of the subject property. TransCanada Pipeline requested, as a condition of consent, that the landowner be required to enter into an agreement with TCPL, that's TransCanada Pipelines Limited, and the same be registered on title prior to the registration of a reference plan. And the recommended wording for the condition is the conditions, restrictions, or covenants specified by TransCanada Pipelines Limited, TCPL, shall be registered against title by agreement in relation to the lands by way of application to register conditions, restrictions, or covenants as applicable pursuant to the Land Titles Act or any amendments thereto to the satisfaction of TCPL. The applicant's lawyer submitted an undertaking agreeing to register the agreement required by TCPL on the subject land prior to the registration of the reference plan. Now, I requested a copy of the draft agreement or their agreement template, which was attached to this report. And basically what the agreement it spells out the requirements for any development in proximity to the pipeline, so that it's registered on title, so that the owners and any subsequent owners of the property understand what their requirements are. Public circulation was undertaken for all landowners within 60 meters of the property, and a sign was posted on the property. No comments have been received. So the application is the proposal is to sever a rural lot in the rural area outside of the Oak Ridges Marine on Pipeline Road, which has frontage on which is a year-round municipally maintained road. The required environmental study was undertaken. While the proposed severed lot does not comply with the minimum size for the rural zone, it must be rezoned to a rural exception, which would permit a reduced lot area. The TransCanada easement, which contains 2 high-pressure gas pipelines that traverse the subject property, and TCPL has requested the development agreement as a condition of consent. So the applicant's application is consistent with the provincial policy statement and the growth plan for the Greater Golden Horseshoe, maintains the policies set forth in the Township of Alma-Haldeman official plan. And the recommendation is that it be approved subject to the conditions that are outlined in the report. Sorry, I believe that Mark Venema is probably associated with the application, and he is at the public meeting, so he may wish to say something.
Okay. Can I ask a couple questions first? Just hold on, Mark. The pipeline is asked for the contract. Is that with the retained property or the proposed, or both?
They have requested that agreement be registered on the property prior to the registration of the reference plan. So that means that it will apply to both the severed and the retained lands, because they're going to register the severance after that.
Okay, that makes sense. The second question I had was, did I hear you say that you're proposing that the land be agricultural rather than rural on the proposed lot?
If I said that was incorrect. I'm proposing that it be rezoned to a rural exception that will allow for the agricultural use to continue.
Okay, and they'll still have to split that, or will they? Because it's some of it will be used as rural and some of it will be residential.
I'm sorry, I don't understand. The lot will be zoned rural, a rural exception, and the rural exception will allow for the agricultural use, which is the hatchery, and it allows for residential use too.
Both.
Yes.
Yeah. I'm just curious on the taxes more than anything.
The taxes, I don't deal with taxes. I deal with land use planning. MPAC MPAC will determine how the property is assessed.
Yeah, because I think it'll have to be 1 acre that'll have to be assessed as residential, and then whatever's left of it, I assume will be left as agricultural.
I
Which would make
believe that
sense.
is typically what happens, but again, MPAC will determine how it's ultimately appraised or
Okay.
assessed.
Thank you, Jennifer. Any questions or comments from council? Seeing none. Mark, you're on the line, I believe.
Yeah, you got me?
Yeah, and we hear you. Do you have any questions or comments?
Yeah, I just have one question. That's about the remaining 24 hectares. I'm just reading here on page 8, saying that the vegetation protection zone should be rezoned to the environmental protection zone. So I guess my question is, what does that mean for future, let's say we wanted to do something with that property in the future, once it goes into this protection zone, is that basically it's a kind of a no-go zone, you can't touch it forever? How does that work?
Sorry, Mark, so the vegetation protection zone is the area identified on figure 2. I'm just gonna take a look at it here. And so you want to know what you can do on that land in the future, is that correct?
So as you're aware, so this property 589 Pipeline Road had 2 severances available. So my brother Kyle and myself both looked at getting severances. I looked on the very east side of the property. And so we had this survey done, the environmental impact survey done, and was told by the surveyors that it's very unlikely to be able to get a severance on the east side of the property due to environmental reasons. So I just kind of said, okay, but it's been brought up to me recently by a few different people that it's still potentially possible down the future, especially with changes to Bill 23, that it still could be potentially possible. So I guess my question is, if this is rezoned today, does that take out any potential possibility for a severance in the future?
Okay, I understand what you're saying. On the the east side of the property, it is a wetland. There is a wetland that has been identified there. So you're correct in saying that a severance wouldn't be recommended there and doesn't comply with any of the policies that we have in place right now. I can't see that anything under Bill 23 will change the ability to sever within a wetland area. That being said, the environmental protection zoning is zoning, and severances are governed by, this is one of the weird things about planning, are governed by the official plan policies. So that area is still designated rural, and severances are permitted in the rural area. And if it ever determines that a severance is possible there, then under the current framework that we have, you still have to do an environmental study or hydrologic evaluation, which presumably will come up with the same conclusions as this study. But we'll say that somehow that changes, and that there are no environmental features there in the future. I'm not sure how that will happen, but it could. I guess anything can happen. Then the land could be rezoned to permit a lot. But I don't see the likelihood of that happening. But it doesn't change the severance or the consent policies. So if it's determined in the future that a severance is permitted and that there aren't any environmental features that need to be protected, then that land could be rezoned. But right now, what we have the science that we have from the experts is that there are environmental features that do need to be protected. And that's why the vegetation protection zone is being established.
Thank
Is that it?
you. That
Go
answers
ahead,
my-
Mark. Does that answer your question?
Yes, it does. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions or comments from council? Okay,
John?
oh, go ahead.
Yeah, through you, Mayor Lowell. So Jennifer, just one diagram here where it looks like the east end of the properties. So the east-south end, is that the area that's environmentally impacted? Is that like a tree land / wetland, or is that a pasture?
Sorry, are you looking at figure 2 or are you looking at figure 1?
I believe figure 2.
Okay, the
figure-
area that's actually designated environmental protection isn't actually identified on figure 2. The area that's actually designated environmental protection is it's not actually identified, but now I'm just going to call something up here for a moment to confirm things because I am now questioning myself. I believe it's in the southwest corner of the property, and the southwest corner of the property is not identified on figure 2. So we're just gonna, if you'll bear with me for one moment.
So it looks like might be a little pond there. Below the yellow.
No, the area that I believe is actually designated in the official plan is in the southwest corner of the property, way down here. It's not anywhere near the severed lot. I'm just going to confirm that. One moment. Because in the section 2.4 of the study, proposed severed lot is located outside of the environmental protection zone. The environmental protection designated is applied to a small area in the southeast corner of the property. So that is it doesn't even show on the area that they studied for the environmental impact study. It's well beyond that.
So I guess my question is if how much of that area has to be rezoned?
The area that we're proposing to rezone is on figure 2. And it's identified as the vegetation protection zone, the 30-meter vegetation protection zone. And it is the distance between it's identified as a blue dotted line.
Yeah.
And it abuts the yellow between that and the green line. That's what needs to be rezoned EP, or is recommended to be zoned EP.
So pretty much along the creek line there.
Yes,
Yeah.
and it's to maintain a buffer between the creek and the development area.
So could a lot be done south of that?
It has to have frontage on a municipally maintained road, because you have to have frontage on a road.
Okay, thank you.
Any further questions or comments? Okay, thank you, Mark.
Thank you.
We'll move on to item 8 now. Oh, I'm sorry.
You didn't make a recommendation.
That's why I was wondering.
Oh.
I don't see them.
No, you don't. It's included in the reports, the recommendation.
Oh, okay, no wonder I can't find it. Okay,
If you'd like, I could read the recommendation and then
please?
council can
You've
make
got
a
it.
decision. Okay, the recommendation is that application AH05-2023 by Wilfred Venema and Sarah Venema to sever a parcel of land for rural purposes in part of Lot 13, Concession 3, Geographic Township of Haldeman, now in the Township of Alnwick, Haldeman, is hereby approved, subject to the following conditions. 1, that a registered survey for the severed parcel be submitted to the township. 2, further to the printed plan of survey, a closed polygon vector file of the part boundaries shown on the reference plan is to be provided in spatially referenced Autodesk DWG Windows readable format to the satisfaction of the township. It is recommended that the applicant's Ontario land surveyor consult with the County of Northumberland GIS section to confirm acceptable standards and formatting. 3, that a draft transfer for the severed parcel be submitted to the township. 4, that the tax account for the severed parcel for the subject property be paid up to date. 5, that a zoning bylaw amendment be in effect for the severed parcel pursuant to the Planning Act. 6, that the conditions, restrictions, or covenants specified by TransCanada Pipelines Limited TCPL shall be registered against title by agreement in relation to the lands by way of application to register conditions, restrictions, or covenants as applicable pursuant to the Land Titles Act or in any amendments thereto to the satisfaction of TCPL. That the applicant's lawyer submit an undertaking agreeing to register the agreement required by TCPL on the subject property prior to the registration of a reference plan.
Thank you, Jennifer. Could I get a mover and a seconder for that? Moved by Deputy Mayor Stover and seconded by Councillor Ainsworth. Are there any further discussions? All in favor? Motion is carried. Now we'll move on to item 8. And this is business arising from previous minutes. And first we have a Keith Bridgman AH01 2020 concession 4, part of lot 18, geographically in Alnwick. And this is a report for information. You want to go ahead, Jennifer?
Certainly, through you, Mayor Logal. Council requested, I can't remember who exactly requested that I bring this back, Deputy Mayor Stover requested that I bring this application forward. This is an application that was previously considered at the May 28th, 2020 municipal planning meeting. It's a proposal to create a 0.89 hectare severed rural residential lot from a larger property with about approximately 37-ish hectares on Merrill Road, 50 Merrill Road, in part of lot 18, concession 4, geographic Alnwick. At that time, the recommendation was that the application be denied because the lands are designated agricultural in the township and county official plans, and the creation of rural residential lots is not permitted in the provincial policy state, within the agricultural designation, within the provincial policy statement, the county official plan, or the township official plan. So at that meeting, a resolution was passed, be it resolved that the council of the township of Alnwick Haldeman, being a land division committee of adjustment, defer the consent as submitted until Mr. Bridgman can make arrangements to meet with the township senior planner, Jennifer Current, to discuss available options for this land. Since that time, the Bridgmans have contacted the township. I believe they've contacted OMAFRA as well as the local MPP. And at the December 16th, 2021 meeting, council of the township passed a resolution asking staff to send a letter to the county to ask them to approach the Ministry of Municipal Affairs and Housing to request that they remap the property, the Bridgman property, to exclude it from the agricultural designation. And that letter was sent on January 5th, 2022. I will say that that Northumberland County is currently in the process of doing an official plan update. And at this point in time, they're looking at what we call the agricultural land use system, which is the lands that are designated agricultural in the county official plan. And that's ongoing at this point in time. I was at a meeting last week and they have some draft mapping available. And at this point in time, this property is still identified in the agricultural designation. However, they do have a list of 29 requests to review. And they'll be going through those 29 requests to review specific land parcels within the county. So that is the status. Nothing has changed in the planning framework since the initial application was submitted and the initial report was prepared. So if I was to be asked today whether I could recommend approval of this, unfortunately, I can't. It doesn't comply with the provincial policy statement, the county official plan, or the township official plan.
Thank you. I heard some of that before, but I'm glad you updated me. There's quite a bit more information than I was aware of, particularly the applications that the township did in late 2021 and early 2022. You got those responses back from the county. I'm sorry, I wasn't speaking in front of the mic. I'll do a better job of that. Mary Catherine, do you have a comment?
Through you, Mayor Logal, will Bill 23 impact both this discussion and the previous one in terms of wanting to intensify use and allowing that secondary dwelling on the existing, like right near the existing house? Will that have an impact?
Sorry. Yes, secondary dwelling units are permitted now on the
Okay.
property. They could construct a secondary dwelling unit on the larger agricultural property, or which they're proposing to sever a lot off of, or there's a Tammy and Carrie have a property on Merrill Road, and a secondary dwelling unit could be constructed on that property. So secondary dwelling units are options here.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Mike, do you have a question or comment?
Yes, to you, Mayor Logo. Jennifer, I'm looking at this right now on Google Maps. And it looks like this chunk of property goes from where Merrill Road splits right back to the 7th line. Is that right?
Yep.
So the part that they want severed looks like it's woodland. Bit of a forest there,
Correct.
correct? So even though that it's not used for farmland, it's still designated and has to go through the county and
Correct.
get changed. It's still part of that whole parcel.
Yeah. I'll just, if you don't mind, I'll just expand a little bit.
Yeah, please, thank you.
Agricultural lands are designated on a larger scale. So there are many parcels of agricultural land in our municipality and all municipalities that will have portions that are either forested, or they may have a wetland on them, or that sort of thing. But they're still surrounded by agricultural lands, and because it's part of the larger agricultural picture, they're included in the agricultural designation.
Okay, thank you.
Joan, do you have a comment?
Yeah, through you, Mayor Logal. Just something you mentioned, Jennifer, that on this particular piece of property that is attached to the farmland, there could be a secondary dwelling put on that portion of the land. And where this severance is supposed to be, that could be a house put on there.
Yeah, they could construct a secondary dwelling unit in accordance with the secondary dwelling unit provisions of the township's zoning bylaw. And it doesn't have to be in close proximity to the existing dwelling, because this is a large property. It's a long property. And the house is the existing dwelling and barns are located more on the southern portion of the property, and the proposed severed lots located on the northern portion. There's no requirement that they construct the secondary dwelling unit in close proximity to the existing dwelling unit.
So I guess in one sense, when I'm looking at this through your Mayor Logal, if the secondary dwelling unit was built on this property, and then the property was to be sold at a later date, could it be severed from that piece of property?
No, the same policies still apply. The same
I was
policy. Same
So,
policy.
when I was reading the documents here, and I did go out and I met with Mr. and Mrs. Bridgman, Carrie and Tammy that are on line right now. With this property, could that be property where this proposed lot is going to be? Could that be severed in half?
I'm sorry, I don't understand.
So we're talking, the farmhouse and everything is on the south end, and this lot is on the north end. Could that big chunk, I forget how many hectares, that big chunk of
The
property?
36 hectares?
Yeah, could it be divided in half?
No, you're allowed severances in the agricultural area to create 2 agricultural lots, but the minimum lot area is 40 hectares. So if you have an 80-hectare property, you could separate it into 2 40s, but you couldn't separate a 36 into an 18 and an 18 because the
Okay.
minimum lot size is an 80 in the agriculture for severances.
And then through you, Mayor Lobo, just one more
Yep.
question for Jennifer. This particular lot, proposed severance, is it listed in the at the county for redesignation?
It is my understanding that both the Bridgmans have done it and the council of the township did it when they asked me to send that letter to the county in early last year.
And that was specifically
That was
for-
specifically for this property.
for this severance.
Yeah.
And I know you and I had talked before that the county has is bringing in an outside agency to look at these properties.
They had what they had was they had a agricultural consultant that's working with their land use planning consultant that came up with the mapping that they have. That is the draft mapping that they currently have.
And would those people actually go to these lots, or would they just look at them generally?
I'm not sure what mechanism,
they
I'm
do
not
that.
sure what mechanism they'll look at them, they'll look at the lot specifically, whether they go out on site, I'm not sure.
And that was expected, I think you said, in the spring of this year.
Well, yes, I believe so. They're currently, I had a meeting last week or the week before about the draft mapping, and staff have municipal planning staff have a month to get back to the county, identifying any areas where we think that there's questions with the mapping. And then then they'll revise the mapping. And then after that, I think they're going to go out and then, well, I don't know whether they're going to go out. I think they're going to look at those requests. So really, probably, I doubt if there's anything public until summer, probably.
And just one more, I'm just thinking when this person or this company does the reassessing the land, are they given any notes or anything pertaining to the land, why the township thinks it's a good idea or not a good idea, that they should be looking at reclassification?
Well, they
Or is that even part of the discussion?
see, the land is evaluated on scientific bases, not necessarily political basis. They look at the soil classifications, they look at topography, and they look at it at a larger scale than just even 50 acres here or there. They look at larger blocks of land, and they look at the capability on that scale. So that's how they do it. They don't go and say, oh, we see that there's a forest here and the terrain is rough, so we'll take this little section out. Because what happens is that every time a house, which we call a sensitive land use, is introduced into the agricultural area, it poses a potential conflict with agricultural land uses. And so if I'm not, in this case, there's a existing rural residential house immediately to the east. I understand that. So
Yeah.
perhaps it wouldn't pose that significant of a threat. But I have dealt with situations where there are so many scattered houses around that a farmer was trying to locate a new pig barn. And he had hundreds and hundreds of acres of land. It was narrowed down to like the tiniest little area where it was possible for him to construct a new barn because of all of the houses that had been constructed around him. So that's one of the reasons that we try to limit the number of sensitive land uses within an agricultural area, is to avoid the potential conflicts. Thank you.
I've learned that this is a good day for learning. So if I understand what Joan was asking correctly, the Bridgmans could build any place or almost any place on that property as long as it's considered a secondary dwelling. Is that correct?
That is correct, provided I can't remember whether there's any lower Trent regulated
Yeah,
lands on
yeah,
it.
or there's a barn closer, or
Yeah,
something like
yeah,
that.
you
But-
have to comply with MBS and you have to comply with any environment, but yes, you can construct a secondary dwelling unit on the property.
And I think whether council realizes it or not, but I'll mention it, the property across the road, exactly across the road from there is zoned rural. So in fact, they could probably build it if there was an application there, it would certainly be considered for across the road because it's rural versus the agricultural designation. Mary Catherine?
Through you, Mayor Logal, and our planner addressed many of the things I was going to raise, but there's a collective good to the designation of farmland. And you're saying, I'm meeting with an individual, this is what would work for the individual, but it is our job as counselors to look at the collective good. And especially in this case, whereas Mayor Logos pointed out, there are other options available. I think we want to not lose sight of the collective good of protecting farmland.
Anybody else have any comments? Deputy
To-
Mayor?
Through you, Mayor Logal, I do notice that Mr. and Mrs. Bridgman are online. I'm not sure if this would be a time to allow them to speak. I realize this isn't a public meeting, but I just put it to you.
Okay.
They know if they are allowed the opportunity to speak, that it will be short.
Thank you. I can't make that decision because I'm only the chair. But if you're making that as a motion, I can ask if someone else would like to second that and then we can have a vote on that. So is that your motion?
Yes, I would.
So we've
make
got a
that
motion on the floor to let these Tammy and Carrie speak for a maximum of 10 minutes, because that's what our limit, I would say. And they're not entitled to, but if council wishes that they do that, then I'd be happy to take that to council. Okay, I've got a seconder for that, Councilor Ainsworth. Anybody have any further discussions? All in favor? Motion's carried. Opposed? No. Okay. Carrie or Tammy, would you like to say a few words?
You'll need to unmute your microphone in order to, there you go.
There you go. Carrie and Tammy, go ahead, please. You're not doing that, are you? It looks like you're muted, Carrie. So if you hit the mute button, I think you should be able to speak and we can hear you. That would indicate that you're able to speak.
Through you, Mayor Logal. Tammy and Carrie, your microphone appears to be unmuted, but we still can't hear you. Is there another setting on your device that needs to be, the volume may need to be addressed with?
We'll give you another couple minutes.
I just gonna, through your. Mayor
Go ahead,
Logal,
go ahead.
Just got a message from Tammy, Ms. Bridgman.
Hi, can you hear us now?
Oh,
Yes.
there, good.
I apologize. We had to dial in from our phone here. Something wrong with the mic here on our laptop. Apologize for the delay.
Okay, go ahead.
Okay, now, we've reached out to the Ministry of Agriculture as well as the Ministry of Rural Affairs and Housing. And we posed those questions to them. And basically what they've come back with and said that it's entirely up to the municipality, whether they approve it or not. They don't have any objections to it. We're saying that, this could impact future agricultural growth, but there's already existing residents right next to the lot, so it won't have any impact on any agricultural growth in the area. We've talked to Waldy's, Thackeray's, and they're not opposed to it, and they keep asking us periodically every time we see them how we're making out. It doesn't make any sense. You're saying you could build a second dwelling, but it can't be severed. So there's no common sense to this at all. I apologize. Like, we're just really frustrated. And if my son was wanting to build on there, there's no way he would ever get a mortgage.
Without a severance.
There's no one that would even take that on. Does that make sense to everybody?
I guess what you're talking about is the mortgage and everything else is the secondary dwelling. Is that what I understand it?
Correct. He would never, ever get a mortgage for a second dwelling. There would be no lender who would even touch that.
And according to emails I have, we can't even sever a piece of land off of our property because it would be taking more land out of agricultural use. Well, our land isn't even in the agricultural mapping. We're considered rural residential. And the
That's
thing is,
probably your
we can
house,
build-
but not the property. Is that true? Go ahead, Jennifer.
Hi, Tammy and Carrie. It's just Jennifer Current. I'm just going to address council on your house. Your house is zoned rural residential in the zoning bylaw, but it's designated agricultural in the township's official plan.
Okay.
so it doesn't really, to me, I'm confused as you say that we can build a secondary home, but it can't be severed because it'll impact future agricultural use. But if he's gonna build a house, he can build wherever he wants on the property. He could take a 2-acre lot right out of the existing field beside us as a secondary home. That's gonna impact agricultural use way more than allowing him to have a severance off of this back wooded lot it's absolutely no use for agricultural use whatsoever.
I see your point.
The thing is too, we could take a drive within a 10-kilometer radius of our home, and we're seeing lots created right in the middle of arable fields, taking productive farmland out of production. it's really frustrating for us when we can see land being taken out of production and we're not trying to take any land out of production. And it's not being allowed.
And we're confused as to, I mean, we got the information from, David Piscini's office stating that if we got a letter and the township got a letter requesting that 2-acre area be remapped, taken out of the agricultural zoning, those letters had to go to Northumberland County, then Northumberland County was to send it off to the province, that little 2-acre lot could be remapped. So the township was, did their letter, we did our letter, it got as far as Northumberland County, and that's where it sits.
Yeah, and I think Jennifer and Joan were addressing that, and I don't know if you heard, but my understanding is that there was 29 potential pieces of property that were that the county was asked to consider moving from rural, pardon me, from agricultural to rural. Is that basically correct? Okay. So I guess my understanding is you're on the list, and I also understand that they've got somebody, a consultant working with them now, and they're going to decide which ones they would approve and wouldn't approve by hopefully this summer. Is that what you're saying? Or at the latest this summer?
Through you, Mayor Logal, I anticipate that it will be this summer, but with official plan work, you can never tell. I think that's their goal.
Okay. Okay.
So he could wait,
Pardon me?
so we're probably looking at another year before anything can be done.
That's a possibility unless we can take a look at, see if there's anything else, but I'm not sure if there's anything else that council can do right now. Or we're not going to make a decision today, are we? Council? Well, we're just receiving actually for information more than anything, aren't we not? Well, I think Carrie and Tammy, I've certainly learned a little bit more on this, although I had got involved in earlier in the year, I guess, or late last fall, and I've learned a little bit more, and I think members of council have too, and we'll have to decide what we want to do if we want to do anything. We're not going to do anything today because it's not listed as part of the agenda, so we can't do anything, but I do
We understand that.
Just another quick point, Mayor Logo, we are aware of the fact that there's a couple of other townships that have approved severances in agricultural zone lands because they've come across situations like ours, realize that, yeah, that's not agriculturally zoned, or not, it's property that's definitely not agricultural land, and have approved severances. How does that work? How did that happen?
I don't know the specifics of something like that, but that's, that's a decision that their councils have made, and maybe there was something different. I can't really comment on something like that, but that could happen.
Oh, I understand.
So I thank you very much for your comments, and council have something to look at it and consider, and we'll do that, and maybe before even we get the hear from the county. I can't guarantee that, but that's a possibility. Thank you very much.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, we're going to move on. We'll move on to a oh yes. Oh yeah, we need a motion to receive this report. Moved by Deputy Mayor Stover, seconded by Councillor Booth. Any further discussion? Go ahead, Mike.
Through Mayor Legault, I just wonder if we should make a note to maybe have another discussion on this application and just see as a group put our heads together with all the information we got and try to shed some kind of light on this for the owners.
We can do that. When are you suggesting, at the next planning meeting or,
Maybe before,
well, what would you like?
like I just, I don't know if we could, just put this on a discussion at the end of one of our other meetings or before, so we can sit down with Jennifer and just talk about all the information we have about it.
Should we do that, Pat? Yeah, I think we'd be better at a planning meeting.
Okay.
Jennifer, go ahead.
Through you, Mayor Logo, we could, I mean, this report's on this agenda. The purpose, I thought that the purpose of having it on this agenda was if council had any questions or anything, they could discuss it now,
Okay,
but that,
yep. Mary Catherine?
I know that, and you guys are very, there's a person in front of me in need, but this is part of a much bigger discussion. It was certainly a discussion I had multiple people reach out during the campaign about protecting farmland. I certainly wouldn't want to be discussing this without it being part of a much broader discussion about it. And I would be interested actually to having someone come from our Federation of Agriculture, some of the people who were reaching out to us with their concerns, and listen to their perspective on this. It's certainly going to be, I know it's a difficult thing, having grown up on a farm and that's your retirement plan and those are your children, but there's also a much bigger picture here about zoning and the collective good. And certainly that was a hot issue during the campaign of people reaching out saying, you've got to protect farmland. And if we make one exception, we are going to have requests for, I don't know how many exceptions, but you know, every time we move forward, it'll be, but you let so-and-so.
Thank you, Mary Catherine. Joan, do you have a comment?
Through your Mayor Local, I guess the only thing, things aren't black and white, and I grew up on a farm as well. So I know I did walk this, not all the property, because I'd have to bring a mountain goat with me. It's a ravine lot. It's specific, this particular property is specific. It's never going to be farmed. It's in the farming area. Right next door, as Jennifer has said, there is houses. There's houses all around it. It just has the classification as agriculture. So I mean, on the common sense scale, it makes sense that it's never going to be farmed, but it just has to be in the agricultural area. So you're in a catch-22. But I do hear everybody's concerns, but I really hope that when they look at this, that they look at the property specifically to see not just this property, but what the other properties that are being asked for a change of designation are. And I do hear everybody's concerns. Thank you.
Go ahead, Mike, do you have a comment?
Yeah, through you, Mayor Lovell. So you know, I feel the same as Deputy Mayor Stovers, and I also get Councillor O'Neill's thoughts too. But if you know, in listening to the owners and looking at the property, it would be probably worse if they put a second dwelling on there, you know, for cutting up the farmland that they got. I know there's rules, and if there's something that we could do to help them out without you know setting ourselves up for something worse in the future, I would like to try to do that. I mean, I see that chunk of property, it's not being used, it's wooded area, and it's on County Road 7. They got lots of room there, they can put laneways and stuff in. You know, I would be for trying to really look at this for them.
Thank you. Good. Greg, you haven't commented, or would you like to comment? Haven't heard you.
Through you, your worship, this came through us to us at the last council, and I see everybody's point. I guess my concern is that it's in process. We have sent a letter. It looks like Northumberland County is looking into it, and I believe until we get some kind of answer for them, and I know this probably isn't the best information for Carrie and Tammy, but there is a process to follow, and we are following it. I would agree with Councillor O'Neill. I would not be in favor of voting for exemptions or anything like that. There are rules and regulations that are set out. They're stuck in this common sense thing, like you say, Deputy Mayor, but there is a process that we're following. And hopefully this summer we'll have an answer, and out of these 39, hopefully all of them, if they're all like this, get an exemption where they say, listen, you know, this is kind of stupid. And let's do it. But up until that time, I'm going to let the process play through to see. That would be my comment.
Thank you. And I guess I'll make a comment, and I'm not saying, you know, I do respect the agricultural land, and we have to honor that. At the same time, I think that if I was flying over top of this, and that's really what the province has done, is they look at the total picture, but they don't look at sometimes the individual
Specific.
properties. And that's the system that we got, as Greg says, and I think that's probably where I don't know, it was Carrie or Tammy mentioned the fact that, you know, some municipalities in our area do approve them. So even though they are in agricultural lands, anyways, we could. I think. Go ahead, Jennifer.
I'm just going to mention something that has absolutely nothing to do with this, but it has to do with the discussion that you're having. I've registered online for a workshop or a conference brought to you by the Ontario Farmland Trust. It's in March. Council might be interested. I could send the link to them. It's Planning to Save the Soil is one of the title of the conference. It's not inexpensive. It's like $50 if you go online, and they'll be discussing, like, you know, the need to protect the environment, the agricultural system and that sort of thing. So I can forward this to council if people are interested in this topic. I can forward it to Pat, or Pat can send it out. I'm not sure about the process for that. So it's a very interesting topic, and it's very relevant to the
Appropriate.
Discussion that we're having right now. And it's not a really expensive thing if you attend virtually.
It's good.
It $50, and I think it will be an interesting conversation. It's on March 23rd. And it's called the 2023 Farmland Forum. And it's brought to you by, it's at the Ontario Farmland Trust, and it's, if you want to physically go to it, it's in Guelph.
It's amazing how things have changed over the last 6, 8, 10 years. I went to the same presentation was another member of council maybe 6 or 8 years ago, and it was north of Toronto somewhere. I can't remember, but it was a pretty long drive, and it was a 4-hour meeting in which but when you can do it virtually, it makes all the difference in the world. So thank you for bringing that to our attention, and it's something we should be seeing that somebody should attend at least one, or maybe two, or maybe all of us. I don't know how your schedules are, but it seems to me to be a good thing we should be looking into. Okay. So all in favor of, what was our motion? Receive the report. All in favor of receiving the report? Motion's carried. Next, we move on to Dave and Colleen Stewart, AH01 2023, concession 2, part of lot 18, geographically in Haldeman, regarding amended conditions to include zoning bylaw amendment. Go ahead.
Through you, Mayor Logo. Last month, Land Division approved a severance for David and Colleen Stewart for the property at 169 Boyle Road. And in the report, I had noted that the property needed to be rezoned as a condition of consent. However, in the recommendation, I failed to include that portion. So this is to update the recommendation to include a zoning bylaw amendment be in effect for the severed and retained parcels. The applicants or the owners are aware of this and they've already submitted their application for a zoning bylaw amendment, which will be coming to the March meeting.
Thank you. I think that we can probably receive and file this.
Nope, sorry, through you, Mayor Logo. We need a decision on this because we'll be updated. The recommendation is that the
Okay.
conditions which conditionally approve the creation of a vacant rural residential lot in part of Lot 18, Concession 2, Geographic Township of Haldeman, and which was approved by the Land Division Committee on January 27th, 2023, be amended with the addition of the following condition. 7, that a zoning bylaw amendment be in effect for the severed and retained parcels pursuant to the Planning Act.
Thank you.
I'll make that motion.
Councillor Booth, seconded by Councillor O'Neill. Any further discussion? All in favor? Motion's carried. Next, we have one application AH03 2023. Irina Piatek. Concession 7, part of lot 21, geographically in Elmwick, regarding creation of a new vacant rural residential lot. And I believe this come up at a previous meeting, and I assume it's coming back for that. Go ahead,
Yes.
Jennifer.
Through you, Mayor Logo. At the January planning meeting, an application or this application, a public meeting was held and a decision was deferred. Council requested that the fire chief be contacted to confirm that they would have access to the building site. There was concern about topography. The fire chief he has now conducted a site visit and confirmed that he has no concerns with the proposed severance and the provision of emergency services to the lot. The second issue that was raised was a neighboring or a public comment was raised with respect to use of the existing building, which was built as a workshop on the property being used for human habitation, and council requested that bylaw do an investigation to see what was happening there. Bylaw had started their investigation and they did a site visit and confirmed that a dwelling unit has been constructed within the existing workshop. According to the applicant, they're not living there, but there is a dwelling unit in it. The bylaw department it will be placing an order on the property and the owner will have to rectify the situation. So that is what's happening with the two issues that were raised at the previous meeting. Now, the conclusions or the recommendation for the severance, it still complies with the provincial policy statement and everything else and the official plan. And fire department has confirmed that they can provide emergency services. So it's up to council. At the last meeting, they deferred a decision. And now you've got the additional information that was requested.
Thank you, Jennifer. I was out and looked at the property again, and I would concur with the fire chief based on the proposed location of the entranceway. I don't think they should have any problem at all with the emergency vehicles getting onto the property and getting to where potential house or whatever was built. So that's my comment. Anybody else have any comments on this particular application? And go ahead, Joan.
Through your Mayor Logo, I'm just wondering, until the bylaw issue has been resolved, if this is just deferred again until we're sure that they're in compliance that way. I'm not sure if that is a possibility to do that.
I would say it's up to council.
It's
correct me if I'm wrong.
up to council, whether or not the zoning non-compliance or the building use non-compliance is relevant to the severance application is up to council to decide. The bylaw department's going through the bylaw, the
channels.
process to go
Okay,
through
fair enough.
with an order, but whether or not you feel that's enough to sway the decision.
Yeah, I would go along with that and,
Anybody else have any comments? Mary Catherine?
Just to follow up on Deputy Mayor Stover. This came forward from the public at a planning meeting, so bylaw compliance is not part of a planning meeting, but in general for the public. So maybe this is a question that we could have come up at a regular meeting. When the public identifies a concern, and I know that we haven't in the past been good at them coming through complaints and compliments, but if things are coming forward, what does the general public then know from follow-up, like on this? Like, so it's coming here and it says that they're required to rectify the situation, which is not, much detail there. So if the person, for those community members, so this isn't a question for our planner, what can they know in the future from that follow-up on it, which, is your question. How do we make sure that it actually is brought into compliance?
Well, we can ask our bylaw officer and I think that's, go ahead, Pat.
So one of the challenges that we have as staff is to protect people's privacy. So if there is an issue that does come forward, then council in a closed session can ask us whether or not the problem has been rectified. As far as the public is concerned, all you can tell them is that it's being looked into by the township. Sometimes it's legal matters, so it'll be going further to court and we can't release the information to the public.
So, but they would receive something saying, we've now started our process or something like that.
Yeah, so now the township is, when we receive the complaints, we're letting the individuals know that we've received them. And then, yeah, we could send them out a notice saying that it's been looked after or looked into. And, but we can't reveal the details.
Right,
because
and I
it
think
could
most
be
people
illegal,
understand that. They
Yeah.
just want to know for sure that
that it's been
it's
looked
sort of
after.
moving through a process.
Yeah.
You can probably go a little bit farther after you've said you've looked at it. You can also say, we've dealt with it and that's all we can tell you.
Yeah, or-
Basically,
Yeah, because we can't, again, reveal the information.
Uh-huh.
Okay, so what do you want to do? Go ahead.
Could
So-
I, hello, question from the floor.
I'm sorry, sir, you're not, this is not a public meeting, so we can't take anything from the floor. I guess it's Neil. Okay, Neil?
Yes, it is, Mr. Mayor. I wonder if there's going to be an opportunity, as there was in the last planning meeting for comment.
This is not a public meeting.
It's up to council whether they want to allow.
Okay.
to speak.
It's up to council whether they want to allow.
People.
I would, through
Okay.
your mayor local, I would give the gentleman the opportunity to do
Okay.
a brief comment.
Anybody want to second that? Seconded by Councilor Booth. All in favor? Motion is carried. Mr. Holtby, you go ahead, please.
Thank you, council and mayor and deputy mayor. One further question, I guess, is, and that would be and this is probably more for Jennifer. So the retained property outside of the severed property, it's my understanding it's currently zone rural. Is that correct?
That is correct.
So in the event that the rectification as put forth in your analysis here, if the people submitting have to build another home, say residential, on that property, because they currently don't have one as has been specified there, would that mean they would have to have the retained property rezoned rural residential?
No, in the rural zone, you can have a house and you can have a workshop or an agricultural building on it. You don't have, it won't have to be rezoned.
As long as, but if they have to put a residence up, that doesn't mean it has to be rural residential.
That's correct.
Okay, and thank you very much. That was my other question on how that was going to be rectified possibly, and if it might impact the existing zoning.
Thank you, Mr. Holtby.
And thank you for coming out and you, Deputy Mayor, for coming by recently and putting your eyes on the subject property.
Thank you. Okay, have we got a motion yet? Okay. Go ahead.
If Jennifer
Booth.
can read the recommendations, then we
Yep.
can vote on it.
The recommendation is that application AH032023 by Irina Patek to sever a parcel of land for the creation of a new vacant rural residential lot and part of Lot 21, Concession 7, Geographic Township of Alnwick is hereby approved, subject to the following conditions. 1, that a registered survey for the severed parcel be submitted to the township. 2, further to the printed plan of survey, a closed polygon vector file of the part boundaries shown on the reference plan is to be provided in spatially referenced Autodesk DWG Windows readable format to the satisfaction of the township. It is recommended that the applicant's Ontario land surveyor consult with the County of Northumberland GIS section to confirm acceptable standards and formatting. 3, that a draft transfer for the severed parcel be submitted to the township. 4, that the tax account for the subject property be paid up to date. 5, that a zoning bylaw and amendment be in effect for the severed parcel pursuant to the Planning Act. 6, that the applicant apply for an entrance permit for the existing field entrance on the retained parcel, and further that the existing field entrance be improved to the installation of a 9-meter by 450-millimeter culvert to the satisfaction of the manager of public works. And 7, that the $11,813.38 development charge for the severed lot be paid to the township of Alnwick Haldeman. And 8, that the $1,500 cash in lieu of parkland fee be paid to the township of Alnwick Haldeman.
Could I have a mover and a seconder? Moved by Councillor Ainsworth, second by Deputy Mayor Stover. Further discussion? All in favor? The motion is carried. Thank you. Now we're going to move on to item 9, which is a motion to reconvene to the municipal planning meeting. The motion reads, be it resolved that the council of the township of Alnwick Haldeman, being a land division committee, a committee of adjustment, reconvene to the municipal planning meeting at 10:45. Mover and seconder. Moved by Deputy Mayor Stover, second by Councillor Booth. All in favor? Carried. Next, we're going to move on to item 10, budget report 2023, the final budget. And I believe Nicole is on here. Do you want to talk about it? Anything, Nicole?
Hi, Mayor Legal. So I really think everything's been discussed and everything's been summarized in my report. If council has any questions, I'd be open to receive those.
Anybody have any questions? Councillor Ainsworth?
To you, Mayor Logo. Nicole, I'd just like to see the figure for last year's taxes. So what was the figure for the residents last year versus what the number is going to be this year? Are we up 1%, 2%? Is kind of where I'd like to know.
So through you, Mayor, I think what you're asking, Councillor Ainsworth, is the actual tax rate increase last year versus this year. Is that correct?
Yes, it is.
Okay, so last year, I believe the overall tax increase was 1.78%. This year, we're estimating around 4.72, and that's including the county and school board. However, that could change a small amount once the county has passed their tax rate bylaw, in case any of the ratios changed. As far as the levy itself, last year it was a 3.93% levy increase, and this year it's 7.49.
Thank you, Nicole. Any other questions or comments? Seeing none, I guess what we'll do is, I'm not gonna call all the departments, but Joan, I think, wants to step out of the library one. So maybe we'll vote, if we can, we'll vote on the library one and then we'll put combined. Does that make sense?
Vote on, yeah, all one say except the library at that point.
Okay. Okay, we'll do it just the opposite way then, but doesn't matter, I guess. Okay, so, well, we'll do the library first because then it's not, and then the final, we'll do the budget. So this first motion is for the approval of the library budget. Okay, so can I get a mover and a seconder to approve the library portion of the budget? Moved by Councillor Booth, second by Councillor Neal. Any discussion? All in favor? Motion's carried. And then I'd like to do all the budget excluding the library. And can I get a mover and a seconder for that, please? Moved by Deputy Mayor Stover, seconded by Councillor O'Neill. Any further discussions? All in favor? Motion is carried. And we're going on to, thank you very much. And thank you, Nicole, for all your hard work and putting that together. And that's enough. Okay, next we're going on to number 11, planning report. And the report by Jennifer Current, senior planner regarding development review. Ma'am, you have the floor.
Through you, Mayor Logo. This is just a summary report of some of the larger, of the larger development applications that we currently have in the municipality that aren't coming to council on a regular basis. They generally take time to go through the process, and it was just to make council, or let council be aware of some of the things that are going on in the municipality. And if you got any questions about any of the specific applications, I would be happy to address them. Specifically, it's the Grafton Heights subdivision that's going through final approval. Rice Lake subdivision, which is also called the Sheer Point subdivision. Phase 1 of the development is largely built out and the developer's working on phase 2. They're looking at increasing the density in phase 2 of the development by 7 lots. It was originally 14 and they're proposing to do 21. So they need to do some additional work in order to justify those additional lots. Roseneath subdivision. That's a 12-lot subdivision that was approved in, I think it was about 1980. The lands were recently purchased. The individual lots already exist. So the developer has submitted engineering drawings to construct the road on the road allowance that the municipality already owns. Once it's going through engineering peer review, the township retains an engineering consultant to review engineering submissions on our behalf because we don't have staff in-house to do that. So it's going through the review. The Danforth 60 subdivision, that's an application for an 11-lot subdivision in Grafton. It's been submitted to Northumberland County and the township. We've had a public meeting. The technical studies have been peer reviewed. Comments were provided back to the applicant, and they're working on addressing those issues. Whispering Springs site plan. Whispering Springs is a glamping, I guess we call it. Glamping establishment. They received an official plan amendment and zoning bylaw amendment in 2020. A holding provision's been applied to it. They're required to enter into a site plan agreement. They applied for site plan agreement in 2021. However, some issues arose with respect to the septic approvals in it. The septics that have been installed exceeded 10,000 liters per day. And when it exceeds 10,000 liters per day, they need an MOE approval. It's an environmental compliance approval. And they're working through that process with a consultant. St. Anne's site plan, we've received an application for an amendment to their approved site plan. They want to rejig how their future suites are going to be constructed on the site. They've got approval for what they previously called a manor house, and the manor house is disappearing, and now they're going to have like sort of a English cottage lane type thing that goes in with individual cottage type buildings that are going to have the accommodations in them. So that's going through the site plan process now. It will also allow for a future day spa on the property too, to separate the day spa facilities from the overnight spa facilities. So those are some of the larger issues. Now, the subdivision applications will come to council for approval. The site plan applications go to the site plan committee, which consists of the CAO, the fire chief, the chief building official, the senior planner, and I believe the clerk. And that's because in 2020, the province changed the Planning Act and councils are no longer able to make decisions on site plans. That had to be delegated, well, not delegated, that was assigned to either a committee of staff or a officer of the municipality. And the previous council passed a site plan control or amended site plan control bylaw establishing the site plan. And the purpose of that was in larger municipalities, site plan approval can be a really complicated and time-consuming process. We're pretty small municipalities, so we're pretty responsive, but there was no differentiation made between large cities and small cities. So once a site plan application has been approved by the site plan committee, a report will come to council saying that it has been approved, and there will be a drawing. And one of the reasons is the site plan process is a technical process. All the approvals have been already given through your official plan and your zoning bylaw. So all of the planning permissions have been given. Now we're making sure they have the right number of parking spaces, that they've got a fire lane. It's all a very technical component. So that's why it's been at the site plan committee.
Thank you. Does anybody have any questions regarding this? Councillor Ainsworth.
Through your mayor logo. So Jennifer, I would just the Grafton Heights subdivision in the Danforth one is the traffic flow. Especially Danforth, because I know kids use that walking back and forth to school. And are they coming off the number 2, or are they going to be cutting through some property onto Danforth for bringing equipment in and out of?
Okay, I think we may have Danforth 60 subdivision is the one we're talking about now, and I think it's an 11 lot subdivision, and it only comes off of Old Danforth Road. There's another development that will be forthcoming sometime, I'm not exactly sure, and it's to the immediate east of the Danforth subdivision, and it goes up from, it goes down to Old Danforth Road to the south and County Road 2 to the north. And that larger subdivision will go out onto County Road 2 and out onto Old Danforth Road. There's also a future road connection between the Danforth 60 subdivision that we're talking about right now and the new proposed subdivision. And with respect to Grafton Heights and traffic studies were done for both subdivisions. Actually, it was a traffic brief for the Danforth 60 because it's only 11 lots. And the traffic study was done with Grafton Heights when it was originally received draft plan approval. for the 40 lot subdivision up there. And with the Grafton Heights subdivision, one of the requirements is that a sidewalk be constructed along Lyle Street, along the county road section from the entrance into the subdivision down to Aird Street. So there's a separate concrete sidewalk that will be going down there.
So when they're constructing all the buildings, are they gonna use the entrance off the, just below the 401 there? Or are they gonna come in off?
They
off
have
Old-
to, they're, the entrance to the subdivision for the Grafton Heights one, they have to construct a new entrance.
From Old Danforth or from County Road 23?
Are we talk? Count,
County Road 23. Old
Old,
Danforth's down
Old
there.
Danforth down there,
There's-
they'll be, it's off of
Awesome.
County Road 23. There's a new
Yeah.
entrance that's gonna be constructed.
Or sorry, I was thinking Old Air Street, where you come in where it splits and comes in the back way.
Oh, not, there's,
No.
no, it's not off of lot of Aird
Aird.
Street,
So it's
It's-
gonna come in off County Road 23.
correct?
All right.
And it was roughly, and I don't know if the plans have changed, but it was roughly halfway down the hill.
Okay, there is an old part of a road that's there now,
That sort of comes in off the
Yeah.
top. No, that's not what they're using.
so they're
It's-
going down farther.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and it's
Okay.
going, it's a significant entrance. There's a significant cut that's going to be required.
Yeah,
And instead of coming down like it does there, the one that you're talking about, I guess it's actually one, it's gonna come halfway down the hill and then on a 90-degree angle to the roughly 90-degree angle, it's gonna go up after they do the cutout, as Jennifer has said.
okay. Kind of been where there's a there's a hydrant right there at the bottom of the hill. So be in
Oh,
in that
water
area,
hydrant,
yeah.
yeah.
kind of in that area,
No, I think it's probably halfway up.
probably halfway up through
Yeah,
there.
it's gonna be, as
It's-
Jennifer says, it's a big cut.
It would be, yes, definitely. It's quite a steep incline. Okay, so the other one down here in Danforth, is it going to, are they gonna be using the unassumed part of that road back in off Danforth, or are they actually coming out onto Danforth?
This portion, the Danforth 60 subdivision that we have an application for now is not on the unassumed portion of Danforth Road. It has frontage on the year-round municipally maintained portion of Danforth Road.
So all the equipment and everything will be coming up and down Old Danforth, basically
Correct.
in front of John's place. That'd be a challenge. For, it's not a wide road and a lot of kids use that for school and stuff, so it will be a challenge. Just my thoughts there.
Go ahead, Joan.
Through your Mayor Logal, and I do realize, I'm not sure what the one up here, I'll just call it the Fidelity one, is it the Old Danforth Development or whatever?
Oh,
I know
okay,
it's in
something like
the,
that.
I know it's in the infancy stage, but I do know traffic is going to be a huge issue there, so I guess that would be something they would have to do their proper study.
Yes, that'll be part of their submission when they submit their application for draft plan approval.
And the, as well now is the speed limit. Is going to have to be, I guess really it should be lowered now. I don't know how we go about getting that done, but,
But we can't do, we have to go to the county to
Yes.
do that.
and we do know our county representative.
Well.
So
We have to
anyway,
make an
that's-
application
that's-
for the roads.
Anyway, that's all I had for that. Thank you for that. It gives us an idea of what's happening.
Go ahead, Greg, or Greg.
Just through you, your worship, to the planner, the Grafton Heights subdivision is talking about the condominium road now that they're gonna hand over to the town, so. Does that change things that if we're plowing it and things like that, is this gonna have to be a certain size of road that, because we have quite big plows, I want to make sure that we're not getting stuck with a condominium road, which means we got to take a quarter-ton pickup truck in there or something like that.
No, the requirement for the condominium was an MTO requirement. It was, the municipality fought it at the time and was unsuccessful, but there's been a change now. And this is I see this as a good thing. The road was always to be designed and constructed to full municipal standards. So it is being designed to full municipal standards. With a condominium road in a development like that, inevitably, the municipality ends up with calls and calls from ratepayers that say, I pay my taxes. How come I have to then hire somebody else to plow the road? And now the that's not going to happen anymore because, and it's constructed to full municipal standards.
Okay, that was just my concern.
Yeah.
I've seen some developments where it looks like it's like a
Yeah.
half road.
No,
And when they put one car, somebody parks on the street and it's like, you can't get a full-size plow through there at all. And I don't want those complaints coming back to
No.
us either, right? Okay, thank you.
full municipal standards.
Mary Catherine?
First, thank you so much for this overview. I really appreciate it. And, you know, it does give us a sense of things that have happened in the past and are happening now. My one question would be about safe walking, which is what you're talking about, Councillor Ainsworth. It's certainly from a health perspective, from a children getting to school perspective and walking dogs. I mean, that's huge. But safe walking community, is there sort of something that ties all that together? Like, do we have a standard?
Through you, Mayor Logal, the municipality does not currently have engineering standards with respect to road cross sections. That being said, that is always something that we are looking at when we do a review of engineering submissions. With the engineering submission for Grafton Heights subdivision, I can talk to it specifically because it's furthest along. I wanted a internal separated sidewalk, concrete sidewalk. However, given the stormwater management, the width of the ditches that are required there, it wasn't possible to get that within the 20-meter road allowance. What so far with the engineering submission, and I must say, this is just staff working with the applicant. Ultimately, council is the one that is going to have to recommend whether these are going to be accepted or not. What we have come up with is a separate concrete sidewalk that comes from the bottom of the hill, so from Lyle Street or County Road 23 up to the top of the internal road, because that subdivision, it basically has one road that goes around and does a loop. So there's going to be a separate, and it's going to be separated from the entrance road by a significant ditch. So it's on the other side, kids, people well away from traffic. On the internal loop, what we have negotiated is similar to what they've done at Glens of Antrim, and it's not painted yet, but it is a widened asphalt surface that includes a 1.5 meter pedestrian or shared walkway separated by I can't remember if it's a 1/2 meter or 30 centimeter. It might be a 1/2 meter buffer strip. So there will be a buffer strip and then there'll be a 1.5 meter road that goes around. So while the municipality, we don't have anything with respect to design standards for subdivisions and walkways, that is something that I do look at when we're looking at these new development applications.
Are you okay, Mary Catherine?
Yeah.
The buffer meter, is that in the Glens of Antrim too?
No, I don't think Glens of Antrim has a buffer one. I was pushing pretty hard for an offsite sidewalk and there just wasn't the room. So, and this is it's actually easier for the municipality to maintain too, because the plow can just go down and plow the whole thing instead of a concrete offset sidewalk where we have to bring another plow, a little sidewalk plow and do it. So we were looking at several different options, and this is the one that seemed to provide the most protection within our allowance that was within our abilities to maintain.
Oh, Go ahead.
Well, I guess through you, Mayor Lobo, one of the concerns I have with the development that's going to be going down on the old Danforth is the possibility of possibly 100 people a day walking up and down that road and possibly more. And I think that's going to be a significant concern, starting with the was it the 60? Danforth 60. And so is this something that you're contemplating with the Danforth 60? Because we've got the hill, and then down farther, you've got a whole other new development with potentially more than 100 people a day on that road. And I think that it's going to have to take some unique planning to, and I do understand what you're saying about the sidewalk, putting that in, whereas if it's a wide enough road, but that road's not very wide.
No. That the traffic issue did and pedestrian did come up during the public meeting and the initial review. So we'll wait and see what they come back with. What I can say is that when they did Grafton or Glens of Antrim subdivision, one of the requirements of that was the installation of a, like, it's your conventional sidewalk, your 1.5 or 2 meter sidewalk, concrete sidewalk separated from the road by the ditch, I believe it is, along the station road section of the development.
Okay.
So, but that was, we'll have to take a look at it. There may be, I can't remember this. You're familiar you obviously walk that road, so you're very familiar with it. I've walked it once or twice, but these are things that the municipality is going to have to look at and negotiate with the developer to see what portion a developer is responsible for and what portion the municipality should be responsible for the existing, on the existing road. Because maybe there's room, or I'm not sure about the road section, how much land there is, but maybe the municipality should be looking at the sidewalks there, like installation of sidewalks as it stands. I've had discussions with Brian McMillan about, I called it a sidewalk plan for Grafton, because there's more people and more people do walking. And what sidewalks we have right now are not in great shape. They're pretty bad. And they just stop. And this is a piece that the municipality should probably be considering. But again, whenever there's costs associated with everything too, not just the construction of the sidewalks, but the maintenance of the sidewalks and the plowing of the sidewalks when we've got snow and that sort of thing. But it is something that we should be looking at in order to have a pedestrian friendly environment.
And especially, if I may, through you, Mayor Lobo, that area that we're talking about at the old Danforth, or on the old Danforth Road, is going to be a favorite walking trail path. And I mean, this is going ahead because developers want to do it. So
yeah.
I think that they are the ones that should be footing the bill for it, not the municipality. But I do understand too down the road that there will be maintenance, and I can concur with what you're saying, Jennifer, and specifically this sidewalk down on Old Danforth heading around to Station. That sidewalk is not in good shape at all.
I frequently walk up Aird Street to
And that's
Lyle,
not good.
back down and around and do a loop at lunchtime. And there's a segment of sidewalk that goes from County Road 2 just past the gathering place. I
Sure.
think,
Good.
and it's, yeah, we've got
Needs
some,
attention.
Mary Catherine?
Just to put on a different hat to the same discussion, when they did the Parks Master Plan and they did the survey of the community, walking was the #1 activity that people did, and they did want to see that improved. And in Roseneath as well, that came up, which I think is part of that crossing guard and why they're asking for it, but yeah, walking is definitely from a recreation point of view, something people want to see.
And actually, Old Danforth is one of the busier ones.
Yeah.
Well, there's a bunch of them, but that they're used probably, you see, people walking every 20 minutes down those on an average day. Go ahead, Mike.
Yeah, through you, Mayor Lovell. So just another thought for Jennifer is the two different developers for the Danforth 60 and plus the one that's coming in as Fidelity at the along the number 2. So in behind Jones' house.
There's two developers there.
Okay.
There's one which is Danforth 60, and then there's the other one, which is the Fidelity subdivision.
So would it be possible that those two developers could work together and bring the entrance in from number 2 for the Danforth 61?
I don't think so. They're on different schedules, and when they initially, sorry, been doing a lot of talking, my throat's getting dry. When the two, I had pre-consultation with the two different groups separately, and when they initially approached me, I told one that the other one was doing something, the other one that this one was doing something, and I recommended that they may want to work together to ensure on their engineering studies and their stormwater management and everything else, and they opted not to. The same engineer, I believe it's the same engineer that was doing the designs for the two. The road connections meld and everything is good there. But they're on different timelines too. We already have the application for draft plan approval for Danforth 60, and we don't have anything for the Fidelity application. And the Danforth 60 doesn't have any access to County Road 2. They don't have any access to County Road 2. So I don't think that we can require them to enter into an agreement with a third party to get access to their property when they have frontage on a municipal road.
And would it be too much for them to use the unassumed road coming in from oh God, what's the to the road that's doing by the KOA, the Benlock?
I don't think they have,
It's a closed road.
yeah,
Or not
that wouldn't
exposed, it's
provide
an
them any
unassuming.
access to, I think there's a water crossing there too that they would have to go across.
No,
Because-
I ride my bike down through there. It's actually a pretty stable road.
With-
It would need some upgrades before trucks. could
It's
do
not a
Cow path.
it's a seasonal road.
It's a seasonal road, yeah.
Yeah. But Mike does bring up a good point. I think that perhaps the fact that both of those two companies are going to come off Old Danforth in their own separate ones, but that's not
Mhm.
really true because you're coming through the other one. That maybe some of that work on the Old Danforth could be
Yeah.
shared. The cost
Yeah,
of-
it would be nice just to see if we could get them away from using Danforth Road in front of all those houses and stuff until they actually put the proper one in there.
Yeah.
Just for
The
being,
only way they can do that is, and it's probably a good idea in my case, to go down to the Old Danforth, go down to the old canning factory and then come back up, but you're gonna hit a
Yeah,
whole bunch
no.
of other people the other way too, so.
yeah, no, it died out to be the number 2 or using that old unassumed road.
Yeah,
It's gonna be bedlam any way you look at it.
yeah. Can I ask you one thing
Certainly.
regarding Roseneath subdivision? It says here the township will need to do a new subdivision agreement or a development agreement outlining legal details regarding the construction. Is that complicated? Jennifer, or-
Well, I've had a brief email correspondence with the applicant's engineer, and typically subdivision agreements or development agreements are done by your municipal solicitor. But I find the most efficient use of resources is to provide them with a draft that they then revise as appropriate, so that they don't have to start from scratch. And the applicant's engineer has agreed to, if I provide him with a template of the development agreement that we exist, current development agreement and our template of a subdivision agreement, he'll take first kick at the can. And then I'll take a look at it. And once I'm happy, we'll provide it to our municipal solicitor for them to do the final look at. Whether it's a subdivision agreement or whether it's another form of a development agreement, I don't think it really matters. I'll leave that up to our municipal lawyer to confirm with us.
And just kind of off topic, but I did get a note from the chief person involved in that. I believe his name was Eric Burke.
Eric Brooking?
Yes, he said he really appreciated you getting a hold of him
Oh, okay.
a couple of weeks ago or last week,
Yep.
I guess it was, and
Mhm.
he said it was very.
Oh,
he
good.
thought a lot of it. So
Good.
I'll just mention that.
Thank you.
Okay, and I guess my only other comment is that until you see that, you don't realize how many little or what or potentially big projects that we're actually working on. And would be nice to get all the 4 of them done in the next 3 or 4 years, but I know you're working towards that, so keep doing what you're doing. So I guess I'm gonna read the motion. Be it resolved, the report from Jennifer Current, Senior Planner, Redevelopment Review be received for information purposes. Can I move her in a seconder? Moved by Deputy Mayor Stover and seconded by Councillor Ainsworth. Further discussion? All in favor? That motion's carried. Next, we have correspondence from the Lower Trent Conservation Authority dated February 1st, 2023 regarding planning and regulations update. You want to take us through that quickly or not? There's an awful lot of changes the way I see it. Holy moly.
I can summarize it. Basically, the Conservation Authority can no longer, under the changes to the provincial legislation, provide comments on matters of natural heritage. So that would be when they previously had said that a natural heritage evaluation or a natural hydrologic evaluation is a key hydrologic evaluation is required. They can't do that. So they can't comment on matters of natural heritage or stormwater management. All they can comment on are natural hazards and regulated lands. That's what it's summarizing.
Like wetlands and that sort of.
If they're only in terms of their regulations, only in saying that there would be a permit required or you can't do anything within the regulated area. They can't provide, we used to get comments from them saying this water course is fish habitat and they should do an environmental impact study. Or this is a key hydrologic feature and a key hydrologic or a hydrologic evaluation is required under the growth plan. They can't make those comments anymore, nor can they. We used to rely on them to provide a peer review of the hydrologic or evaluation or the environmental impact study, like I got for the Venema application. We used to rely on the Conservation Authority to say, yep, that looks good. We can't do that anymore. The Lower Trent can't comment on those. So if I think that something looks funny with one of those, and I think that it needs to be looked at by a peer reviewer, I'll have to ask the applicant for a deposit to pay a peer reviewer on behalf of the municipality. Now, I imagine in most cases, provided they use one of the environmental consultants that's on a list that we have through the Conservation Authority, that peer review is probably not going to be required for most of them. So they can't provide us with those services anymore.
Go ahead.
That's basically what it boils down to. They can provide us with comments on their regulated areas and natural hazards. So floodplains, erosion hazards, karst topography, that sort of thing.
Councillor Booth.
So through you, your worship, I guess to the 2 representatives on the Ganarask and the Lower Trent, looking at this, does this mean that we should be lowering our rates that we're paying to them? There's 10 acts here now that they're not going to make any comments on or anything like that. Ganarask is usually fairly good with their money and everything. I'd be more interested in the Lower Trent, that they're the first ones out of the gate with this saying, guess what, we're not doing this. And it's like, well, okay, we pay you over $100,000 and something. So if you're not going to provide that to us, obviously, to me, staffing wise and that looking at this, there should be some savings.
Go ahead, Mike.
Yeah, through you, Mayor Logan. No, I 100% agree. I think as a council, we need to talk about that, and I'm sure it's going to come up at other councils throughout the county. And you know, just talking to some of my my partners on that board already is, you know, they're thinking the same thing. So it's a valid question, and I think it's something that we have to address. And it only makes sense.
Yeah. So some of the services that they do provide us now, are they included in their charge?
It's funny that that council's having this conversation on the levy component of the conservation authorities things, because when we had the meeting from a staff perspective, I asked if the application fees were going to be lowered because staff weren't commenting on those issues, and they told me that no, they wouldn't be, but they also said that the province has frozen their fees, which the province has. So even if they wanted to lower them, they couldn't lower them because the province has frozen them.
Wow.
So that's what I was told.
Maybe through your Mayor Logan, maybe a letter to our member of parliament to that effect.
So the Endangered Species Act, and using that as an example, do we normally get, if we're asked to do that, do we normally get paid for doing that? Or I guess we charge the subdivision applicant.
So it's going to be easier for a subdivision application.
Yeah.
It's going to be much easier for a subdivision application because when we get a subdivision, we take a deposit. And they're used to this. They take a deposit and they have to pay the township's costs associated with any peer review. So I can hire a peer reviewer out of the developer's deposit. It's more of a concern when a hydrologic evaluation or an environmental impact study is required as for a consent or a severance application, like the one that we just had. If it like Fidelity or Danforth 60 or whatever, they would not be shocked that I would have had to get a peer review of their environmental impact study if it had been required. But now the Venemas, who just hired a consultant to do a study, they would have, you're now asking me for a deposit to do a peer review of a study that the Conservation Authority used to do for us as part of their $420 application fee. That's, and if I went to get I imagine if I went to hire a consultant to do a peer review of the EIS, it's probably going to cost me $420. I don't know.
Yeah.
But that's, and that was actually a very valuable service that the Conservation Authority did provide to us. So that's a little, I will miss that component.
Go ahead, Greg.
I guess through you, yours, so basically it's being downloaded to the person now that's going to do the severance or that, because they're going to have to pay for it.
Yeah.
Which, and that's why I agree with you, Councillor Mike. I'd love to attend that meeting when you bring it up to say, you know what, now that there's 10 things that you're not going to make any comments on, or that they obviously must have had staff that were researching or commenting on that. And it only makes sense to me that, well, there should be a reduction then, or if they're going to freeze it, as you say, Mayor, they better freeze it for the next 10 years.
Mary Catherine?
I actually see the potential to not be able to move through processes as quickly because there's a very few people who are experts on some of these things. And there's going to be a lot of, how do we find the person to do this peer review or whatever it is? So there's going to be a cost potentially to people, but I think there'll also be a delay factor. And, you know, I'm not sure that we've moved ahead in serving people.
Is there anything we can do now? Or just,
I think through your Mayor Logo, my game plan is For those applications that we require a EIA, environmental impact study, or a hydrologic evaluation, at this point in time, we require the studies. We'll have them do the studies. I'll review them from a planning perspective, see if I have any questions or concerns. If I have no questions or concerns and they're not making any really weird recommendations or saying that there's not going to be any impact at all, we'll probably just accept it on the face of the professional that provided the application, provided the study, provided that it is prepared by a qualified, recognizable firm.
Do we need to put somebody, what's the word for it? On
Retainer,
retainer, yes. That's the word.
that's an option. We
Because I'd hate to,
We've
and I don't know
only-
if you have to send out for quotes and everything else, but you have to send out for quotes for every time you get something,
yes,
then you're gonna be, as Mary Catherine says.
this is something that I think I've spoken, I don't know if I've spoken to you, I've spoken to Deputy Mayor Stover about. Right now, when we get an application for a plan of subdivision or a engineering submission, I have to send out quotes, a request for quotes from 3 different firms and get those quotes in, and then send them out. And it probably takes about 3 weeks to a month by the time you send out a quote, get a quote back, and award a quote. So I'm working on this, I call it the schoolhouse subdivision. It's the Roseneath subdivision. I'm working on with a new engineering firm. It's a smaller one out of Peterborough on it. So I was going to see how it goes, because I haven't been entirely successful with the past couple peer reviews. Everybody's very busy and not necessarily very responsive. These people so far seem to be quite responsive. And if this goes well, I'm going to put out a request for engineering services to have somebody on call and bring a report to council, hopefully, so that I don't have to go through the quote process every time we get an engineering submission, so that they could be sort of an engineer on record for the municipality. Some of the bigger companies, things are just getting lost, and it's really difficult right now. Everybody's having a hard time with it. So that's something, that's the same thing that you're talking about, but you're
Yeah.
talking about for environmental consultants. It wouldn't be an unwise thing to find an environmental consultant. Unfortunately, I don't know whether anybody would be happy doing that, because by becoming the municipality's peer reviewer, I can't guarantee them how many studies they would be able to peer review for a year, and they would then be not able to quote on those jobs that come up in the municipality. So say Cambium was the one that provided this report. If I went to Cambium and I said, okay, will you be our peer reviewer? Now they can't quote on the studies. So I'm not sure how successful I would be in getting a peer reviewer, but it is something that I can look into.
Okay. Any further comments on the report or anything else you'd like to do? Go ahead, Mike.
Through you, Mayor Lovell. So would it be a direction from this council for me to bring this up at my next board meeting for the Lower Trent Conservation?
I don't think you need
my-
direction from us. I would just think that would
Do
be a common sense question to ask, that looking at all of this means that there should be a reduction then or something, but.
Yeah.
Yeah, go ahead, Pat.
I would just suggest that it would be a stronger support to Councillor Ainsworth if it was a direction from all of council.
Well, it'll actually be for
From
both.
Yes.
So I'll make that motion then, that both our representatives.
Thank you. Thank you.
Well, maybe I took it the wrong way, but I think you were saying that council should write a letter
Yeah, you should pass a motion.
to
and
send a
then
letter,
send a
and then
letter.
when you guys get there, you can bring it up to them too. Agree?
Yeah, I agree with that. You can write it, Pat, any way you want, to a letter from council.
Well, yeah, she'll be fine, but basically what she's gonna say is we received this notification, you're not gonna be able to offer near as much of the work,
we
and
wanted to see-
when we're gonna start seeing the reduction.
Yeah.
isn't it?
Now, Ganaraskis might have to be a little bit different because they haven't sent us anything yet, but I'm sure they're not too far behind Lower Trend.
Mayor Logo, also, listening to
Well,
the
let's-
conversation, is it possible that we could use Lower Trent Conservation like as a one-off? If we need some of these studies that Jennifer's talking about?
The Conservation Authority has indicated that they are unable to do that.
Okay,
They've just said the province will not allow us to do that.
So first of all, we need a motion.
You have a motion, you need a seconder. So Councillor Booth had made a motion that both
Okay.
representatives approach the Conservation Authority regarding the changes in whether there's a reduction.
And a letter be sent on behalf, okay?
Yeah.
That's the motion. Can I have a seconder for that? Councillor Ainsworth? All in favor? Motion's carried. Next we have bylaws, number 13, bylaw 202023, a bylaw to adopt the 2023 budget for the Township of Allen-McCalderman. Be it resolved that bylaw number 202023 being a bylaw to adopt the 2023 budget for the Township of Allen-McCalderman be read and deemed to be passed this 23rd day of February 2023. Mover and a seconder, please. Moved by Councillor O'Neill and seconded by Councillor Booth. Further discussion? All in favor? Motion's carried. Announcements and notices of motion. Councillor Mary Catherine O'Neill.
Nothing to-
I have nothing today. Deputy Mayor Stover.
I have a few things, just to finish up with, the planning department part. I'd like to make a motion that, the municipality prepare a bylaw for road assumption for Parkview and Hampton Court at the Sheer Point subdivision that was constructed in June 2023. And to pass a bylaw for Allen-McCalderman to assume the road.
Okay. Just a bit of a comment on that. Deputy Mayor Stover and I attended a meeting with a gentleman there that had been working with the previous council, and I believe with some staff as well on getting that done. And we think it's a good idea to proceed with that. He also had a few recommendations regarding what's probably the best way to put that, on processes when we are building that keep the areas clean of debris and that type stuff, as well as mud on the road and different type things. So we've asked staff to look at that and they'll be coming back with something for that.
And I guess, did you need a seconder for that before we continue? Please.
Oh, okay. Seconded by Councillor Booth.
And this is basically, at this point, there was 2014 maybe, or there is a letter from the engineer that stated at the time, if they put up a checkerboard sign and a couple of minor things, the road was up to par at that time. And for whatever reason, a bylaw was never done to assume the road. So at this point, it's just a housekeeping issue.
Yep.
And it is just in those areas. It doesn't, I believe, take into place phase 2 at all. And it's just the road, and there still are other things, the stormwater pond management for phase 1 is still outstanding, but this is just the road issue.
Okay. Thank you. Oh,
Oh, I do.
I'm
do.
sorry, John.
I do have one other thing,
No,
you should-
we
but I
need a
need to
vote.
have a
You have a
Oh.
motion on the floor, and you
Yeah.
need to call the vote.
Oh, so
Yes.
this is a notice of motion or no?
This is a notice of motion. Okay.
So is there a difference between that?
No, that's fine.
Okay. Yeah, the notice of motion
Yeah.
should come up at the next meeting.
Yes,
Okay,
and I do have one other
yes, go ahead.
notice of motion, and it is in the, on the agenda. And, be it resolved that HR 2.22.
Sorry. We haven't voted on the previous motion yet.
So,
Okay,
so that's why I was getting confused. It was a note, Deputy Mayor Stover was presenting a notice of motion. It didn't require a seconder. When you said the motion, you said you were putting forward a motion, so I thought it was a motion, so.
Okay, thank you.
Just a notice of motion will be on your next agenda.
Okay.
Sorry.
And this is, shall I read the motion that's in the agenda?
that's, yes,
Okay, so the, and I will have an inclusion at the end of this as well. Be it resolved that HR 2, a notice of motion, statement of policy and procedure include duty of care for volunteers of Alma Calderman. Be it resolved that HR 2.22 ON be revised to reflect the below changes. That HR 1-0 or period 03 period ON paragraph 1.04 be removed. That HR 2.08.0N include the word volunteer. That HR 2.22ON4F include HR 5.01.0N. That HR 5.01.0N include the word volunteer. And that the word volunteer be used in any other statement of policy and procedure that would provide duty of care for volunteers of Alma Calderman. The inclusion that I would like to add is that this include putting a volunteer coordinator in place at the township that would provide duty of care and information for the volunteers of Alma Calderman.
okay,
And that does it for me.
so this should be read as a motion,
Yes,
okay,
because this has already been
Yes.
presented previously as a notice of motion, so
Okay.
yes, you can vote on it.
And
so
my
can I
addition
get a
at the end.
seconder for?
But were there changes added or anything to
I
this?
added the back, the last.
So does that not have to go back as another?
We can bring it forward at your next meeting, at your next regular meeting.
And could I ask, just to clarify, and could we have some more background information, maybe the pages that this affects so that we can actually see? Because it's to say, remove this, add this or whatever. I'd like
exactly.
to just see the page, just to see what we're actually voting on.
I think
So-
it's the pages as well. And simply that volunteers be provided protection at the township.
Yeah.
And be acknowledged.
Totally agree with you. I just like to see where it
Exactly.
comes in and what we're removing. It's easier.
Thank you.
I think that's a reasonable request.
I think that would be what was gonna happen anyway, wasn't it? Mm.
Okay, anything else?
Nope,
Deputy Mayor?
that's it for me. Thank
Counselor
you.
Mike?
Yes, through you, Mayor Logo. So this has nothing to do with planning, but it's kind of a hot topic right now in our municipality is our tax receipts. I wondered if we could have some clarification of what's going on with that. And if, and I don't know if we can, and we could also, like, I know some of the people are coming in and they're getting charged for extra tax receipts. That's really not their fault. If it's a fault of Canada Post, then we shouldn't be charging our residents for a copy of it if they need it or they can't get it. But I would like just some clarification of where we're going with all that.
Well, I can explain a little bit, from what I know is that the taxes were sent out on February the 3rd. They were taken, and I'm gonna use roughly, because I don't know exactly, but I heard there was about 4,000 tax bills that went out, taken over to the post office in Grafton, and they were taken down to the Belleville sorting area. And over on the 4th or whatever that, and over, I can speak personally, I think some other people would agree that I got mine within 3-4 days after that. So it went to Belleville and it came back. But I'm also hearing that some people are not getting them back, have not got them back. In fact, there was a bunch come back to the post office on Tuesday for distribution. And so they put them in the letters. And I've also heard, and Joan, you're aware of some from the Roseneath area that are facing some difficulties as well. And so my understanding of it is the policy that we have is that they have to pay $10 for a receipt of a new one. That's what the policy states. And I guess that's basically it. So I have been letting the process go as it is, because I can't really stop nothing. But I think when it gets all done and gets through, council's going to have to make a decision on whether we can accept that or not. But I've been kind of laying low with the intent of that when it does end on Friday, and if we have a bunch of people that have paid their tax or that $10, then we should be probably refunding them. But I think that's
Yeah.
wait till end until we find out exactly what's going to be reported. That's my Mary Catherine.
I would add that I am aware of someone with a Baltimore address who also didn't receive theirs. I think we're going to have people who didn't realize. Like it's great that we had these keeners who said, wait a minute, I should have my tax bill, and made the effort to come in. And it's unfortunate that there was, because they're going out of their way. They've come in here to try to pay, but there's going to be people who the bill didn't arrive. And they're going to be late payments. And I think it's one thing to say these 10, but there's also a late penalty. And I think that's going to have a negative impact on our residents. And again, if they pay it as soon as they receive it, should they be penalized? It's an interesting question.
Well, we are, my understanding of it is that staff have somehow made contact with the right people at the post office and have sent a complaint to them saying that this should not have happened, and how do we hold them accountable?
But in the end, when somebody receives their tax bill the day it is due and they then pay it 3 days late, I don't think, I don't know if we are allowed to make a motion saying that we're going to put that payment date back.
I don't know if we can do that. This is,
Because I think otherwise this is only going to get even worse than what it already is.
and I'll give you another opinion, and just what someone told me was that, and I'm not saying it's right or not, so don't take it the wrong way, but that person also said that if I have my driver's license and I know that it ends on 1st of June or whatever, and I continue, and I didn't get notification from the province, and I drive my car, does the police charge me or not? I don't know what the answer to that is, but,
I would say yes, they will charge,
but I was never notified.
though.
Well,
And I guess that
Actually,
gets
that-
back to the fact of the tax bills and the people that, the one lady that did contact me, she knew she didn't get a tax bill. So they know they aren't getting them, but they're used to getting them in the mail. So I think the problem, I guess, really lies at the sorting of the mail, and why Grafton mail would get sent to Belleville and then back here instead of separated. I don't know. I'm not working at the post office, so there are a lot of questions to be had and answered.
I was just gonna say through your worship, maybe we should wait until the end of the week and then we'll have to deal with it then, because I see both sides, because you will have, you make a good point about your driver's license and you'll have some people that know that they owe it, but would take advantage to say, I'm not paying. I'm gonna pay it late or whatever. So I see both sides, right? I say we wait until the deadline's passed and then if we have to deal with one or two, because Mary Catherine, you make a good point too, right? So hopefully the people that know, I mean, that's an excellent example, right? About, I didn't know about that with your driver's license until my wife was told last year, right? So we had both had to go in and do it, but
Interesting times.
it's the end of this week, right? Is it?
Yes, Friday.
And I think, and I could be wrong, Pat, but did the town not just send out something on their website too about the taxes to say, if you haven't received, please call the office or come in and see, and but according to the bylaw that is right now, if you're late, you pay the fee, right? Unless we change that later.
Yep. And that's, and according to our treasurer, that's the municipal act. It says you have to do this and you have to do that.
Well, it's not negotiable downstairs. If you come in and you're late, and they don't get to just say common sense says I waive it. It's like you're getting charged that and that's it. So.
Yep. Like,
Yeah, so, so I would say, it's what we're saying is that, a couple things here, but. You know, with the issue that we have right now, a lot of people aren't getting their tax bill. And so we getting people that are coming in here and calling us saying, hey, where is it? So that's a good thing.
yes,
And it's brought to light, and hopefully Al McCollum is not getting centered out in all this tax bill stuff, and maybe some of the other municipalities have the same issue, but but at the same time, for your example, I've been pulled over by the OPP and I haven't had my license renewed and they let me go get it done, kind of thing, right?
Yep.
So it's the same thing that we're saying here. It's not the residents' fault right at the point that they're not getting that tax bill. I think most of them probably know that it's coming up and it's coming due. So it just adds fuel to the fire when they're coming in and going, hey, I didn't get my tax bill, I want it so I can pay it. And then we say, okay, where's your $10? So if we can waive that fee for the next couple of weeks, that would be great. I can understand if someone's 15 days late, but not to the people that are paying it on time all the time and have this issue. The other thing that's came out of this, this tax issue is some people are finding they have credits on their account. So which means that someone's come in and paid their tax and it's gone on the wrong, there's credits on people's taxes.
yeah,
Quite a bit in some of the ones that I've heard. So I'm assuming that someone's come in and paid their tax and it's got put on the wrong tax property.
okay.
So that's maybe something that we can also look at too.
So
Go
a
ahead.
couple of things. First, have they contacted the office to make the staff aware of it? And the other thing is some people pay pre-authorized payments, so
Mhm.
they would have a credit on the invoice until the taxes are due, and then it would be taken off. So sometimes we have those scenarios, but I can mention it to the staff downstairs, but
Yeah, one
people
person
are-
said, sorry, so one person said they had a $4,000 credit.
okay.
So
Did they contact the office though? 'Cause-
I think, yeah, they were in here at the time, they looking for their tax bill and they found out they had a credit. So it's just,
Why didn't they give me one of them?
so I just, again, just, like we talked about this stuff a couple of times at council, and just when the residents are coming in and how we all work together to make sure that we all get the proper outcome of all this here. And it's just, so I just saying, like, adding fuel to the fire about this $10 is probably not the right thing at this time to do. Let's
I think.
find out what happened. Let's, and I think we have. Let's move forward and do a better job next time.
Okay,
Canada Post.
Canada Post, yep. And I agree, it's not dropped. And at the same time, I want to say something about our staff. Our staff have been, because of this,
Yeah.
have been getting an awful lot more calls. Where's my tax? Da-da-da-da-da. And they're getting an awful lot of people that normally come in, 2 weeks early to pay their taxes. But because the people haven't got the tax, they're all coming in the last 48 hours or week, and it's been a challenge for everybody.
So is there something we could do to do this online? So we don't have to mail them out? Is there a program or something that we can put together that people can just go on our site and call up their?
Well, people can, and a lot do pay on their mortgage and that type of stuff.
Yeah,
That sounds like a good idea, Mike, and I'd like to do it, but you'll run into people that don't have internet, et cetera, which, I'm not making excuses, but.
but it might only be a small majority of the people that you would have to send them out to if they were
But-
signed up to the program, right?
I don't know. It's a good question.
And it might save us, mailing fees and stuff.
Yeah.
And less work for staff.
There's
Maybe.
probably I would expect there's some laws on what you can do, what you can't do when you're
Yeah.
billing taxes,
Like,
but I don't know that. But we can certainly look, can't we?
Oh.
Mary Catherine?
That was my point. When I had people reaching out, they were that I would like to be able to check online. But one neighbor was brilliant. She just looked at her previous tax bill and paid the same amount. So I'm wondering if we could put on our social media and even possibly a media release that the amount for this payment is indeed going to be the same amount as your last payment.
And that's generally true, but
Yeah, so the first installment of the year is based on 50% of your last year's taxes.
and when I talked to Nicole, she said that's a pretty good general thing, but there could be some minor changes of one, and then
Yeah. if
that's
somebody
why you
had-
can't go by it 100%, but
Yeah, if somebody had a
99%.
supplementary tax bill,
yeah.
then they'd have to make sure that they added that with their total, so, yeah.
Which yet, I just know that people online, I didn't have anyone contact me, but about this, but they were online saying that they can't get through to the office, which is tied to the volume, but if you can't get through, maybe here's an option.
Go ahead, Mike.
like I'm one of those persons that has the automatic debit from my account for my taxes, and it's so simple. If there was something we could do to
Encourage.
encourage, thank you. People that aren't doing that. Some of the senior residents maybe not might be our biggest challenge, but it would
that
be
done
maybe
automa-
good if we held a seniors fair, that we could put something like this from the township in that to try to get more people on that program.
Is this is on your mortgage program, or you just automatically have something taken out every month out of your?
Yeah, the municipality, they
Just pay right to the municipality.
they debit my account.
And I
You know,
think that
that's-
actually comes on your tax bill. When you receive your tax bill, there is, Counselor Ainsworth, a thing that says if you want to do automatic withdrawal, which I know on Facebook, social media, a lot of people now are getting aware of, to say, hey, listen, instead of coming in and making that big payment, it's just automatic, right?
That's a
Versus
heck
the
of a good
bank,
idea.
Yeah, and
It's the-
that's included in the tax flyer that we
Yeah.
just sent out as well.
Is it?
Oh, I
Well,
think that would be
It
good.
would
Probably wouldn't hurt to,
Yeah.
And everybody gets one of those, well, not everybody got one, but yeah.
And the beauty of it is, after you have a issue like we're having right now, it really makes sense to just do it
Yeah.
and forget about it.
It's so simple,
Yeah,
and I don't even have to worry about it.
yeah.
Well, as long as you got the bill to know what the amount was.
Yeah, but
But you will always have people that are the diehard ones that will come in and wait until the last
Yep.
day, and they will pay because that's the way they want to do it, and they don't believe in
They don't
the
wanna
new way,
lose the
right? But
interest.
Well, it's something that for Mary Catherine and I, when we put some things together for our Parks and Rec and Culture Committee to and we have a seniors fair, it would be nice to have somebody there from the municipality to sell this.
Okay. Counselor Booth.
Nothing planning related at this time.
Okay. We move on to 15. That's approval of the confirming bylaw number 21-2023, being a bylaw to confirm the proceedings of the municipal planning meeting of Thursday, February 23, 2023. Be it resolved that bylaw number 21-2023, being a bylaw to confirm the proceedings of the municipal planning meeting of Thursday, February 23rd, 2023, be read and deemed to be passed this 23rd day of February 2023. Mover and a seconder. Moved by Deputy Mayor Stover, seconded by Councillor Ainsworth. Further discussion? All in favor? Motion is carried. And an adjournment, be it resolved, the municipal planning meeting be adjourned at 11:58. Mover and seconder. Moved by Mary Catherine and seconded by Councillor Booth. All in favor? Motion is carried. And it's